Welcome back to another Top 10s Day Wednesday video. In today's video, we're taking a look at the top 10 most played EDH commander cards from Battlebond. Hello and welcome to another Top 10s Day Wednesday video. The focus of this top 10 list is on the most played commander cards from Battlebond as per EDHREC.com. Only originally printed cards are considered, no reprints. Battlebond was released in June of 2018 and was the first set designed in Magic the Gathering's history, emphasizing the two-headed giant gameplay variant. The Plane of Kylum was utilized as the storytelling mechanism for the set, where entities throughout the plane converged on the arena of Valor's Reach in order to watch 2-on-2 combat. Hence the set's focus on two-headed giant gameplay. As a multiplayer-themed set, naturally the EDH Commander community took notice and embraced Battlebond, often renaming the set Commander Masters. Before we begin our list, let's make a very honorable mention. The honorable mention for this list is the Allied-colored fan lands. Battlebond introduced a cycle of dual lands that enter the battlefield tapped unless its controller has two or more opponents. As EDH generally is a multiplayer format, this cycle of lands was welcomed with arms wide open by Commander players as a much more affordable option to original dual lands. Although they can't be targeted by fetch lands, their ability to provide mana immediately as long as its controller has two or more opponents warrants their high level of playability. If included, these fan lands would have occupied 5 of the top 6 spots on this list, and that seems pretty boring. Therefore, I decided to mention these lands honorably before we discuss the 10 spells that are on this list. So with that being said, let's begin. Number 10 on this list is Bramble Sovereign. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, Bramble Sovereign has the ability to create a token that's a copy of that creature by paying 1 and a green. It's important to note that Bramble Sovereign's ability can be activated for any non-token creature that enters the battlefield. This means that Bramble Sovereign's controller can create a token copy for an opponent, if that opponent had a non-token creature enter the battlefield during their turn. This feature adds a layer of politics to the EDH Commander table, an attribute generally celebrated by the player base. Bramble Sovereign is popular in Jirid Conclave Exile and Yarok the Desecrated EDH builds. Number 9 on this list is Thrilling Encore. Thrilling Encore is a black instant for 4 and a black that puts onto the battlefield under its caster's control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Under the right circumstances, a timely Thrilling Encore could be game-ending. This mimics a powerful sorcery called Rise of the Dark Realms, where all creature cards from all graveyards are put onto the battlefield under the caster's control. Although Thrilling Encore is a bit more selective, limiting the player from reanimating creature cards that were sent to the graveyard that turn, it is still a powerful recursion spell that can be cast at instant speed and a popular staple in black EDH commander decks everywhere. Number 8 on this list is Last One Standing. I am surprised a spell like Last One Standing made this list, as it's a randomized board wipe where only one creature survives. That's because its caster chooses a creature at random and then destroys the rest. Perhaps the price is right, as this sorcery only costs 1 black and a red to cast and around $4 to purchase. These are much more economical options both mana-wise and financially than a card like Damnation, which destroys all creatures in play for 2 and 2 black. Currently, I do not have any decks with copies of Last One Standing, as the randomness of the board wipe concerns me. I prefer to know which creatures are heading to the graveyard if I commit resources to casting a board wipe. Also, possibly leaving the most troublesome and/or problematic creature in play with no creatures to block it is a deal breaker for me. Number 7 on this list is Krav, the Unredeemed. Krav the Unredeemed is the first partner with creature to make this list. When Krav enters the battlefield, target player may put Regna the Redeemer into their hand from their library. Krav is a 3/3 legendary demon for 4 and a black with a versatile and powerful ability. By paying a black mana and sacrificing X creatures, target player draws X cards, gains X life, and then Krav gets X +1/+1 counters. Krav is a sacrifice outlet, a card draw engine, gains life, and gets bigger. Krav is listed in more than 5,000 decks through EDHREC.com. He is more popular in the 99 than as a general commander, particularly in token and or aristocrat builds, where his ability can be activated by investing a single black mana. He is a great fit for an Athreos God of Passage Shadowborn Apostle deck. Number 6 on this list is Bonus Round. The second consecutive sorcery on this list is another surprise. For 1 and 2 red, and until end of turn, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, that player copies it and may choose new targets for the copy. As a long-standing deck building principle of mine, I generally do not include spells that can help my opponents and or harm myself. Similar to Last One Standing, Bonus Round is a spell that can harm the caster as much, if not more, than their opponents. Notice the rules text on this card. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, a player could be an opponent. I prefer not allowing my opponents to cast free spells, which is why, currently, I don't have Bonus Round in any of my decks. Number 5 on this list is Stolen Strategy. Now this is my kind of card. Stolen Strategy is the first and only enchantment to make this list. At the beginning of its controller's upkeep, Stolen Strategy exiles the top card from each opponent's library. Until end of turn, Stolen Strategy's controller may cast spells exiled this way and may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. If we consider a typical EDH commander game to have 4 to 5 players, then the card advantage generated by this spell creates a massive discrepancy in resources. Each opponent adds a card from the top of their library as a potential spell to be cast. In addition, Stolen Strategy fixes the mana in order to cast these spells. Why isn't Stolen Strategy higher on this list? Number 4 on this list is Peer's Whim. We go back to the sorcery well once again for Peer's Whim, a green sorcery with the friend or foe mechanic. For this cycle of cards, its caster chooses friend or foe for each player. When labeled as a friend, something good happens. When labeled as an enemy, something not so good happens. For Peer's Whim, each friend is allowed to search their library for any land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Consequently, each foe must sacrifice an artifact or enchantment they control. Although the investment to fetch out any land from our library for 3 and a green does not feel good, forcing our opponents to sacrifice their soul rings, mana crypts, explorations, and or Ristic Studies feels good. It feels really good. Number 3 on this list is Toothy, Imaginary Friend. Toothy, Imaginary Friend is the second partner with creature to make this list and the first blue card. When Toothy enters the battlefield, target player may put Peer, Imaginative Rascal, into their hand from their library. Toothy is a 1/1 legendary illusion for 3 and a blue, and whenever its controller draws a card, they put a +1/+1 counter on Toothy. When Toothy leaves the battlefield, its controller draws a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. In blue decks filled with card-drawing, blank, and bounce spells, Toothy can be a valuable cog in a card-drawing engine. Its 1/1 body makes it vulnerable to direct damage removal, but again, it's in blue, so there are a lot of ways to protect it. Number 2 on this list is Peer, Imaginative Rascal. It is the third and final partner with creature to make this list. When Peer enters the battlefield, the target player may put Toothy, Imaginary Friend, into their hand from their library. Peer is a 1/1 legendary human for 2 and a green, and if 1 or more counters would be placed on a permanent the player's team controls, then that many +1 of each of those counters are put on that permanent instead. This is a cross between Hardened Scales and Doubling Season, 2 green enchantments that have combined been listed in over 33,000 decks through EDHREC.com. As Simic has strong +1/+1 counter themes, it is unsurprising that the combination of Peer Imaginative Rascal and Toothy Imaginary Friend would comprise 2 spots on this list. So what's number 1? Number 1 on this list is Spellseeker, and it's not even close. Spellseeker is listed in twice as many decks through EDHREC.com than Pure Imaginative Rascal, which is number 2 on this list. Spellseeker is a 1/1 human for 2 and a blue, and when it enters the battlefield, its controller may search their library for an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less, reveal it, and put it into their hand. The ability to blank, bounce, clone, and copy Spellseeker's Enter the Battlefield trigger makes her so valuable, enabling its controller to seek out any instant or sorcery spell in their deck with a converted mana cost of 2 or less. I have a copy of Spellseeker in my Yarok the Desecrated deck. When she enters the battlefield, I usually am searching through my library for Demonic Tutor, Cyclonic Rift, or Assassin's Trophy, 3 premier EDH spells. Being able to copy this ability in order to bring multiple instant and or sorcery cards from library to hand leaves little doubt as to why Spellseeker is the most played EDH spell from Battlebond. That'll do it for this top 10 list. Don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons on the way out. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.